we talked about professionalism before, but like what of the invisible structures of the culture that was in the amateur days withstood professionalism, and what actually started to fall apart when things got formalized?
Yeah, I mean,
It,
obviously, I retired in 2011. I I was kind of came out came out of the system then. So, a lot of my contemporaries were kind of transferred over. So, Rocky would have been she was a bit like the Jason Leonard in more ways than one of the women's game, like, starting a very much amateur era, and then carrying on, to the first starts of the professional era. I think a lot of the culture probably did carry on, that kind of their focus on the 1%, and also their focus on the when no one's watching. Everyone's still kind of spread geographically, and whilst they were on contracts, many of the players were still working as well or had part-time jobs. They weren't paid by clubs at that point. It was only a few players at the top, internationally that were able to, take sabbaticals from work or go part-time. At that point, it definitely wasn't a long-term, full-time career choice. It wasn't, as stable as it is now. If it ever is, you never know when injury might come. So, it was, it had gone a long way. I don't know. I wasn't one of those players that was in there that was getting paid. I would hazard a guess that actually there wasn't a huge mindset change because, as we said earlier, we considered ourselves to be professional many times.
yeah,
I remember listening to Sarah Hunter saying, "Well, just got more sleep," when they went professional. And actually, apart from that, same amounts of training, probably got more sleep and did a bit more video analysis.
yeah, yeah. I mean, so yeah, basically the systems held when the game went pro, and then you said it after 2014, the results start to deteriorate, and they got rid of the head coach as well. So something, I'm wondering if another sign that something perhaps was going amiss within the organisation or
Yeah,
in the structure.
yeah, possibly. I mean, I think it was time like Gary Street and Graham Smith. Two of my best friends. I have huge respect for both of them, and they took the game from a platform that was created by Jeff Richards. He was instilling some more professionalism. He was a coach in 26, and then and Graham was in there, and then with him and Streety, they took the game forward and measurably, put a huge amount of hours driving up and down the country, did a huge amount of sessions with players, worked with the EIS to get a really good sort of S&C platform. They took the game on hugely. But as in sport, it probably was right that, that someone else took over, that probably the time was right. It was a bit of an odd way that it happened, and I don't necessarily think that they got the kind of the plaudits or the celebration or the recognition that they should have done. However, yeah, I think it was probably a good thing that actually new coaches came in, and then, I think Mitch is doing a great job now. And I think it's brilliant that he's come into the game actually, and I think, it's kind of renewed his love of rugby, I think, but a coach of his caliber, has done a lot, I think, for women's rugby. I think previously, coaching in the women's game was maybe seen as a bit of a stepping stone to something else, um, which was sort of maybe difficult. You say, "Look, like, this is high performance. This are women playing and competing at the top of their game, just like men are playing and competing at the top of their game. It shouldn't feel like a stepping stone. And actually, in some ways, maybe coaching in the women's game is more challenging. And we ask a lot more questions. um, and so, actually, I think Mitch coming in has been brilliant. And I think it's good that he's sort of renewed, or said that he's renewed next to the next World Cup. I think that's great. And, whilst you haven't actually asked me this, I'm going to chat about it anyway. I think it doesn't, doesn't bother me women's coaches or men's coaches. I think it's the game, and it should be whoever's best for the job, quite frankly. And, I've been coached by women, I've been coached by men. And I hope we don't get to the stage actually where we feel that in the women's game, it should only be coached by women and only refereed by women. I've had a bit of an issue with that in previous World Cups where they've had so many female referees, and some pushed into that World Cup arena perhaps when they shouldn't be. They should just be the best referees for the job.